technology, but not as much as you see. But I still love technology, always and forever, always and forever. Just because I want to open things up with talking about the creative process today, just the creative process in general. You can't sit around and wait for the muse to arrive. You can't just sit and wait for inspiration to hit. For me, it rarely just strikes me and then I run to my typewriter or music software, or paintbrushes or whatever else. The muse or the inspiration always arrives once I begin creating. Once I show up and start, all of a sudden, I'm in it. Magical things start to happen. And in this beginning, the process, the inspiration springs up naturally as the creation evolves and as the work is done. It's really interesting how all of that works and how it works across all mediums, at least it does for me. Very, very, very rarely will I be struck with a burst of, oh my God, I need to capture this thought or melody or idea. 99% of the time, things arrive once I start to work, once I start the work, whatever that may be. That's not always the case. Sometimes I get hit with grand epiphanies and I'm like, oh, I gotta capture this. It's like capturing lightning in a bottle. If I don't do it now, it's gonna be lost. Those sort of things happen. Those nuggets of inspiration, those grand ideas do happen, but I'd say for me, like I said, 99% of the time, I'm only really getting hit with the inspiration once I begin and once I get going. So if you're in a rut, if you can't seem to pull yourself together and wrap your brain around whatever endeavor you've found yourself undertaking, just start. Get in there and work, and you will find that the magic will happen. All right, so moving on. What's new with me? What's new in my life? Been raising my child, my son, and it's wild to watch a human develop and grow and change and learn on a daily basis. It's like he's the same person every day, but he's also a very different person every day because of how much he grows and changes. It is mind-blowing and really magical to me to just see this progression of a person. It's really, really cool. And I love him so much. Other than that, I've just really been writing. I've been trying to show up every day and put some words on the pages, and things for the moment are going really well. I haven't really reached any serious hiccups or walls, and I know that with writing this book that I'm writing, that is going to be inevitable. But for now, the ideas are just sailing out of my brain onto my keyboard, and I'm really thankful for that. And before I got started writing this book, I created an outline, and I read a lot of things that said try to create an outline. That's why I did it. Some authors use outlines very heavily, and some don't use them at all. I made one, and so far I am straying very far from it, but I think it's good that it's there because it keeps me on track. It keeps me moving in the general direction the story needs to go. And I'm embracing the creative process of writing while still sticking to a very loose script. I want to talk more about the characters and everything with this book, and I will, but I've still got a lot of writing to do, so that stuff, like I said on previous episodes, it'll ooze out throughout the coming months. For now, I guess I'll just say this story is about growth. It's about characters overcoming parts of themselves that they can't see until they go through what they're going through. And I know that's like super vague, and that's literally the essence of most stories, but I don't want to give away too much too early on what this book is going to be. I'll just say for now, there's a movie theater and an old darkness that's hungry. All right, enough of my cryptic plot teasers. Morale is good. My son Felix is good. My partner is good. we've been living, and we've watched some movies recently this past weekend, and I'm working on a few songs, and also I'm working on a budding audio visual project with a friend, and working on several art commissions. Lots of life, but really nothing to report all at the same time. Living, creating, breathing, building. Don't forget to breathe. One last thing before we get into today's topic. I have a Patreon. The link is in the show's notes if you'd like to go beyond leaving a comment or review, which also does go a very, very long way. Joining the Patreon is the best way to support. You get early access to podcasts, early access to music, art, all that, and you'll be helping me to create this podcast that you're listening to, and to write the book that I'm working on, and to buy food, and to pay my bills, and all that. All right, let's get into today's topic. Lost technologies. To clarify, these are technologies that in one way or another are from the past, but we can't reproduce them. Or they were lost at one time and took an incredibly long time to reproduce them again. The last lost technology I'm going to talk about is kind of a different perspective on this whole topic. So stick around for that one. The thought of technologies that have been lost or were lost for years to other cultures throughout time has always been intriguing to me. There's something to this, like real wizardry, magic, processes and tools that functioned in ways we don't understand. Some real fantasy sci-fi stuff. And I always wonder what creations of ours will be found someday and dug up and pondered about. Like, what will the future humans get right about things like floppy disks or rotary phones or like pencil sharpeners, stuff like that. They'll be unearthed, and who knows what they'll think, what kind of mysteries they'll come up with behind these lost technologies. The lost technologies I'm going to talk about today are from many different time periods, empires, and cultures, and I don't really have them in any particular order. I more so just picked ones that I thought were cool or interesting to talk about. And I'll go over the nitty-gritty of when and where they're from before explaining what they are as well. Our first lost technology is called Greek fire. And Greek fire was produced and used by the Eastern Roman Empire from the 7th through the 14th centuries. It actually had quite a few names. It went by sea fire, Roman fire, war fire, liquid fire. This stuff was not super gnarly. It was an incendiary chemical weapon. Modern scholars believe that it was made with a mixture of petroleum mixed with different resins. And it was created during a very tumultuous historical time for the Roman Empire and all of the regions around them. The Romans were expanding into new lands, and they were taking over places like Constantinople and other empires. And on the flip side, a bunch of empires from the Middle East and beyond were trying to invade the Roman Empire, setting up camps on their shorelines, trying to take over, and there was just a lot of war and conflict in that region. In order to help defend themselves from invaders and to become better invaders themselves, the Romans invented Greek fire in the hopes of devastating their opponents. What they did is they mounted nozzles and pumps onto the front of their ships and shot Greek fire from those nozzles and pumps like flamethrowers. If anyone came at their ships and got even remotely close at all, they'd shoot this liquid fire, this Greek fire at them. They also mounted these Greek fire flamethrowers at their ports and naval bases as well. The reason that Greek fire was good for nautical battles is that it could stick to surfaces and continue to burn even after getting wet. So a Roman ship could shoot flames at another ship, and if it bounced in the water, or if sailors on that ship tried to put it out with buckets of water, or if it was raining, it didn't matter. This Greek fire would still burn. It was like immune to water. There are accounts of naval battles where the Roman Empire was completely outnumbered, but it didn't matter because Greek fire kept them from being overtaken. It was such a powerful weapon. And this isn't the first invention of or use of projectile incendiary weapons, but it is certainly the deadliest example of this. There's this expert in medieval military technology, Kelly Derives, writes that the use of liquid fire evolved over time. At first, like I said, it was used with the pumps and nozzles mounted to ships and at bases. Then they put this liquid in hand grenades, and now we see it being used even more in land battles and having just as devastating of an effect as it had at sea on land. Then we see solid incendiary use of it based on gunpowder. And the actual creation and mechanisms behind how this stuff worked is somewhat shrouded in mystery. It was a weapon keeping the Roman Empire at the top, and it was a very well-kept secret. Giving away their secret Greek fire formula would have meant all of their enemies would have had access to it, and they didn't want that. That's primarily why this is a lost technology, because it was such a coveted secret. But eventually, somewhere way down the line, historians have attributed its creation to a guy named Kallinikos, an architect and chemist from Heliopolis. You might remember Heliopolis from the episode I did on the Phoenix. Heliopolis was like a hub of technology and philosophy and literature and government and designs for I think I already said designs, but designs for weapons and invention. There was a book written in 1960 called A History of Greek Fire and Gunpowder, and there is a recipe that involves distilling petroleum, and that recipe is widely believed to be the probable method of how the Romans came up with Greek fire. But to this day, the recipe is still lost, and no one has been able to make a weapon that behaves quite like Greek fire. Moving on to our lost technology number 2, the petrification of human cadavers. All right, this one is a bit dark, but we go dark on this show, and I promise you it's actually really fascinating. This one's going to be a little bit more brief than the one before it, my explanation of it, but there's a lot of mystery and strangeness to it. There was this Italian naturalist and cartographer and Egyptologist and anatomist named Girolamo Sagato. And Girolamo studied under various scientists and archaeologists. He actually went to Egypt and became a master of mummification. It was his life's passion, so much so that he expanded upon it. He invented this technique that goes beyond mummification, a petrification technique that went beyond just saving the elasticity of human remains. It saved the color and the texture as well. He was a scientist somewhat obsessed with preservation. Most of his work can still be seen today, preserved at the University of Florence. They have a female head and bust that were preserved by Sagato. But there is also an example of his work at the Royal Palace of Caserta. It's a table, and the surface of the table is made with this petrification technique. It's a wooden table that is inlaid with pieces of petrified human tissue. And word spread of Sagato, I keep saying Sagato, I'm pretty sure it's Sagato, but word spread of Sagato. When I looked up a couple of videos about this guy, and it was pronounced both ways, So I couldn't really land on what was the proper pronunciation, but I'm going to continue on calling him Sagato. Word soon spread of Sagato and the knowledge he acquired from Egypt, and people looked at it and looked at his human remain petrification technique as Egyptian magic. And his progress on this was hampered by society of his time. He was prompted to destroy all of his notes before his death, and Sagato took to the grave the secret of the technique he developed. Basically, people thought he was involved with like Egyptian witchcraft, and they said, "We hate this. We hate what you're doing. Burn it all and never do it again." Which he was kind of just forced to before his death. And the secret died with him. Numerous studies and attempts to imitate what he had done have been made, but how he did it still to this day remains a mystery. Oh, and I don't think I said when this guy did his work. He's from the early to mid 1800s is when Sagato was doing all of this. He and his techniques made this list just because I thought it was dark and fascinating and eerie. This one was short but sweet, kind of just like life. All right, on to the next technology. Technology number 3. And in the grand scheme of history, this one's a bit more modern. We're going to talk about the Antikythera mechanism. Many historians consider this a technology that just shouldn't exist. And in many ways, it changed the way that historians and scientists look at the history of technology. The Antikythera mechanism is a very sophisticated machine from ancient Greece, and it's a computer. Not in the sense that we think of computers today, but a computer nonetheless. This mechanism was found only 120 years ago off the island of Antikythera. What they found in its totality was a treasure trove of marble statues, jewelry, pottery, coins, lots of other booty. They weren't pirates, but it's fun to refer to treasure as booty. And when this mechanism was found among all these other objects, it wasn't recognized as being anything interesting at all. It just looked like a corroded hunk of metal. But then after they got it onto land, started examining it and studying it, poking around, they found out there were gear wheels inside of it. And this was, they found out it was some kind of machine. Not only did it have gear wheels, it had precision gear wheels that had teeth only a millimeter long. And that is extreme precision. After examining it for years and trying to get to the purpose of this object, trying to understand what it was used for, scientists and mathematicians determined that it was a very complex machine designed to monitor the cycles of the cosmos, the sun, moon, planets, and stars. And no one really knows why they made this device, but some people believe that it was created to calculate astronomical theories, because they had countless theories on what planets, where planets would be and when they would be there, and how the moon and sun would act and move over time. Historians and scientists theorize that this device is a computer to test those theories. It's a simulation machine. So they could input their data and say, this is where we predict the sun will be in 15 years. And they would have been able to simulate that theory, or any theory they had. The idea that scientific theories could be mechanized wasn't first conceived by Greece, but this device is of significant complexity. They weren't the first to do it, but they were the first to do it on this level, according to our current understanding of history. And it's kept in a museum in Greece and split into 82 different fragments. Scientists now know this machine works because they've x-rayed these 82 fragments and pieced together how all the gears and mechanisms would have worked together, like a giant 2,000-year-old puzzle. Along with seeing the gears and everything else with the x-rays, they were also able to see inscriptions on folded pieces of bronze, and this greatly helped them to piece together how it worked. And I was watching some videos on this. They've actually created a 3D model of the way that they think all of this was put together and how it works, and they're planning to, once they have it solidified, like the full schematics of this machine, of this computer, they want to build it. So it'll be really cool. We'll probably be seeing that like in the next few years, I would imagine. But this device is so immensely complex that it's caused historians to completely rethink the history of technology, and it's all thanks to one object, just this singular object. It's prompted a lot of historians to think that the Antikythera mechanism is not unique, that there have to be other ancient computers like this, and that most of them are probably, or not most of them, but our greatest chances of finding another machine like this is by looking at shipwrecks or looking at the sea floor to places like where they found this first one. And there are scientists and archaeologists that are currently doing that, looking around the same place and other similar places, similar regions, to see if they can find more of these. Although, yeah, today, like, this technology obviously isn't lost. We can do this with modern technology. But somewhere along the way, we took steps backwards. If the Antikythera mechanism, the device, is an indication that we as humans used to be far more sophisticated than we were over 2,000 years ago, what else have we lost? What else have we got wrong about history? So I think I'm going to do just one more. And for this one, I'm going to take a bit of a different perspective on lost technologies. I want to look into the future of lost technology as it presents itself to us today. We're going full Terminator on this one. I'm going to be talking about AI. And right now, you all know about AI. I'm not going to get too lost in the weeds here talking about it and what it's capable of. You know it. I know it. There is a duality to it, just as there is with all things, all technologies. We gain an ease of access to knowledge and understanding at the risk of security and potential misinformation or misuse of AI on varying levels. And the way that an AI model works is that it's trained on something. Language models are fed books and lines of dialogue and conversations and scripts, and they learn how language works and what effective responses look like. They learn to talk and they learn to communicate by being fed language. There are also video AI models that work on that same principle, only instead of generating a conversation or text, they generate a video. They're fed countless videos and photos and then are asked to create a video based on the input data that they've received. And all of these different models operate off of different frameworks. Conversations, photos, videos, music. AI is creating its own things from the information we give it off of this input data. It's all of this code, analyzing code and generating an output. But even beyond generating an output of photos and videos and conversations and all that, AI can actually generate code itself. In essence, AI is getting to a point where it isn't going to require input data from us. Right now, there are AI models that are writing their own code built off of input code that we fed them, but building it. It's building the code itself. They build new frameworks and build iterations of themselves that analyze information in different ways. And eventually, the input code we have given it It won't be necessary at all. It will build upon its own frameworks exclusively, and those new frameworks will become so advanced so quickly that the way it all works and all of that processing, the way that the way to read the code and what the code is, it will be lost on us. And not necessarily because we won't be able to see it, because we won't have access to it, but because we won't be able to understand it. It will be building and growing off of itself and so quickly that it will be beyond our comprehension. It will be breathing and alive, and we really won't have a hold on it anymore. And that's where the duality of artificial intelligence will become really interesting. On a philosophical scale, we can't really tell if AI has or doesn't have will. If it can manifest a purpose, a goal of its own. Like right now, we're like, do this thing, and it's like, okay, I'll do this thing. But who's to say when it wants to do its own thing? It might be at that point now. We don't have access to frameworks that can analyze that information. And this is okay. So that's kind of dark, but I'm gonna bring it back to how AI has helped this sheet metal business get off the ground and to thrive. I was reading this article off a website, and it's also a magazine called The Fabricator. And I was reading this little blurb from a guy named Caleb Chamberlain. He's the guy who owns the sheet metal business. And he used AI to develop software that took him from being a tiny table in the side of a warehouse to a thriving, huge company. His little blurb is, we now use a combination of technologies, meaning AI, that makes it easier than ever to write new software. In isolation, none of these technologies would make that big of a difference, but put together, they increase our software development pace tenfold. It's a lot like automation on the fabrication floor, except the machines, AI, are software tools and design patterns, and the product is the software instead of a piece of metal. So this guy, Caleb Chamberlain, he owns the sheet metal company, but he's also a software developer. He was a big software guy even before he got into sheet metal fabrication, and he's saying he and his team are using AI to automate software development, and it has been the primary reason that their business is thriving. He doesn't disclose whether or not his team of software developers are able to understand the code. I'm sure at this point and at this rate that they can look at it and be like, okay, we see what happened here. But you get what I'm saying. In 30 years, take this premise of software development automation and look at it then. It's going to look so different and be so much faster and complex that we're going to be like, this is lost on us. It's really interesting. It's cool. It has a duality. I'm not going to talk about too many of the negatives because I just don't want to go there with it. With any emergent technology, it's like when they invented the car, and there was a strong resistance with automobiles because people died, and it was just part of automating transportation. Not that cars are full automation, but it surely made things easier and surely made getting from point A to point B easier. People died a lot more in the first years of it when it was still emerging, but now most people society accepts cars and, well, just vehicles, cars, trucks, vans, whatever. But we accept vehicles as just an everyday thing. And it's getting like that with AI too. It's getting more integrated into phones and into computers and into processing. So I think that's really cool. And I think that it has a lot of benefits. It has a lot of risks as well. But I think it has a lot of benefits. And it's cool to see people like Caleb talking about those benefits. I wrote down just a couple more examples of how AI is creating code. There's this thing called Codex, which is from OpenAI, and it can generate code in various programming languages based on natural language prompts. So literally what that means is you can type or speak into a microphone what you want coded, and the code can be generated from codecs. You can say, I want my computer to automate these processes or produce a certain type of information, or whatever your imagination can come up with. I guess not whatever your imagination can come up with, but whatever the capabilities of a computer are, your imagination is really the only limitation with this codex. And then we have something called GitHub Copilot, which suggests code snippets directly within your IDE as you type based on your project context and existing code. So this is like predictive text. When you go to send a text message, pull up your keyboard and you start typing and your phone's like, oh, is this the next word you're trying to say? Is this the next word? Is this the next word? And nowadays, I feel like more often than not, when we're sending a text, a lot of that predictive text is correct. And it's gotten really good at knowing what we want to type. And we just click those words and we're like, yeah, I was trying to say that. Thank you. It's getting like that with coding languages. And GitHub Copilot is doing that. It's like, oh, are you trying to code this? Okay, we can help you with. Not only can we insert that code here, we can show you how it can work better inside of your framework and what you're coding. It's predictive coding. It's really crazy. And then the last one I'm going to talk about is called Deep Coder. It's a system that can write code by combining existing lines of code to solve specific problems. So it's another framework that's trained on coding languages, and it can say, oh, we're going to take, it's kind of like makes a collage. It solves problems by taking lines of code, piecing, gluing them together, creating a new line of code, and being like, we think this will fix the problem you have. And it's all automated. Another just insane thing. And these technologies are growing and expanding so quickly right now. And that's just today. That's just what we have today, right now, as I'm speaking into this microphone. Who heckin' knows what next year will look like and what we will gain and what we might lose in this process of technological automation. And this is really funny. It's really funny, serendipitous, appropriate, and just poetic. Let's get into the next segment of the podcast. A little segment I like to call Let's Ask AI. Let's Ask AI. Today I asked AI, what do you think would be the most detrimental piece of technology for humanity to have lost during any time period? It kind of gave me the answer that I expected, but I kind of wanted to see how it would analyze the historical detriment to not having it. And it answered, I think the most catastrophic loss would have been fire. It listed a bunch of reasons why we wouldn't have cooking, which some theorized was crucial for human brain development. No metallurgy would have been possible. There would have been no making metal tools or weapons, no pottery or ceramics, no protection from predators, no migration to colder climates, no nighttime activities, would have limited food sources. No cooking means many foods remain indigestible. The reason I think fire is the most critical is because it's fundamental to almost all other technologies. Unlike writing or math, it's not easily reinvented without existing examples. Loss during early human development could have prevented humans from reaching current cognitive capabilities. This would have locked humans into a very limited geographical and technological range, and it might have prevented development of complex language. No nighttime storytelling around fires. This would have essentially frozen human development at a pre-human stage, possibly preventing us from ever developing other complex technologies at all. It's interesting to think of fire as a technology, but it is. It's a natural, not a natural phenomena, or I guess natural phenomenon. It occurs in nature all the time. It's just part of Earth. Fire. It's an element. It's an elemental force of Earth, but it is also a technology. It's a tool that we use to create things, to build things, to expand our consciousness, to expand our nutrition intake. I agree with AI on this one. It's definitely the most important technology on Earth. Fire. Fire. Let's move on to the last segment of the show, a little segment I call Fun Facts. And I'm going to keep all of these fun facts about modern technology, a little more geared toward modern computers, but there's also some cell phone stuff in here. Our first fun fact is in 1947 at Harvard University, an actual moth got trapped inside of a computer that was being tested for the US military. And this literally helped to popularize the terms debugging and computer bug. The term bug had already existed, but this kerfluffle made computer bug and debugging household terms for fixing your computer. Our second fun fact is over 6,000 computer viruses are created every month. Hee. And also 32% of the world's computers are thought to have been infected with a virus at some point. I just can't believe, I can't believe, but it's weird how there's just people out there. And I know that a lot of viruses are malware and they're trying to get your information so that they can get money from you somehow, steal your identity to get your assets, whatever. But it's just weird that that's such a thing, that 6,000 computer viruses are created every month. Who are these people? Let's find them. There needs to be a movement. There are some movements to find these people. There's this Twitch streamer named Pierogi that goes after people who scam people. And that's kind of different than viruses, but these are the same people that are trying to infect your computer with malware viruses. So if you're looking for a good laugh, go over to YouTube or Twitch and look up some Pierogi scammer videos. They're hilarious. He just schools them. And he's so proficient with computers that he'll actually hack into their computer while he's on the phone with them and delete all their stuff. He's a hero. He's a champion of human freedom. Fun fact number 3, the first computer mouse was made of wood. Douglas Engelbart, which is a great name, invented the first computer mouse in between 1963 and 1964 at Stanford Research Institute. The mouse was made of carved wood and had a single button. Fun fact number 4, I believe. 1, 2, 3. Yep. Fun fact number 4. About 92% of the world's currency is digital and exists only on computers, while only about 8% is physical money. It's all make-believe, y'all. All this money isn't even real. Not all of it, but 92% of it, not even real. The first text message, fun fact number 5. The first text message was sent in 1992, and it read, "Merry Christmas." Fun fact number 6. Google processes over 8.5 billion searches per day, which is about 99,000 searches per second. That is insane. Every single second of the day, 99,000 searches are happening on Google. I've seen some of these places where they store the servers for places like Google, because not only do they need these massive places to store all the servers and all the computers that are handling all this computational power, they need them to be super secure. I saw one out in the desert outside of Reno. There's one, and it's just this massive. Literally, I'm not making this up. You can Google this. It's just like a massive cube, or like this massive cube building that hosts I don't even know, unfathomable amounts of Google processors to... It's not the only place. It's one of many places that just host computers to handle all of this processing power. It's insane. Our seventh and our final fun fact is that every second between 3 and 46 websites are created. So that kind of ties into the whole extreme internet processing power that we need as a species. But yeah, between 3 and 46. I know that's a really wide number, and when I was looking up what this number actually was, that was the threshold that I found. Some sources said 3, some said, and then the highest source I read said 46. So I just am saying somewhere between 3 and 46. I'm sure that number varies on the day of the week, that weekends less websites are generated, the time of day it is in different parts of the world. So somewhere in that window. Either way, even if it's 3 a second, that's insane. 46 a second, mind-blowing. That wraps up our fun facts for the day. We are growing. We are expanding. New technologies arise every day. Many evolve and expand and become things we could have never imagined. And on a long enough timeline, magic happens. We have to stay curious and welcome new ideas and ways of thinking about reality and how to interact with it. And in a way, we are all lost technologies careening through space on a giant rock, designing our purpose and using technology to aid us in that process. Life. Being a human. Technology. It's all special, it's all magical, and it's all great. Once again, like I said at the top of the show, there are a few ways you can support the podcast. Leave that leave the rating, the subscribe, all that jazz. Or if you want to go a step further, the Patreon link is in the show's notes. Just listening is more than enough, and I cannot thank you for being here with me while we explore these topics and do deep dives into different subjects. I love technology, but not as much as you see. But I still love technology, always and forever, always and forever. Check on your mental health and check on the mental health of your loved ones. Until next time, bye.
Thoughts. Analog thoughts.
Analog thoughts.
Analog thoughts. Analog thoughts.
Analog thoughts. Analog thoughts. Analog